Where did Stafford go?
Check, check. Can you hear me? Can people hear me? Say that again. Orange. Orange.
Oh, yeah, we're going to start in a minute.
Check, 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 check. Welcome, guys. We're going to get started soon. This is a program called Going Deep, curated by my friend here, Colleen Gutwine. We're Index Art Center, and I'd like to thank North the Shore Festival, NJ Pack, RBH, who else? And all you guys, of course, and the artists that are in this participating. So soon, it's going to get started. Colleen will be up here, and the artists, and you're going to love it.
All right, thank you. Hi, can you hear me?
You got to put it pretty close.
Can you hear me? All right. Well, thank you all for coming out. We really appreciate it. I'm so excited to dive deeper into the artwork of Stafford Woods, Visa Washington, and Patricia Dahlman, who've all been working for decades in and around Newark, and I don't believe that the art scene would be even close to what it is without these artists. So, we're already a little delayed. Let's just get rolling. We're going to start with Stafford Woods. We're going to have a little slideshow projections going on while Stafford's speaking, and this is also being recorded and live streamed, so if you can't catch the whole thing, you'll be able to watch it online later. All right, Stafford Woods. Yay! Yay!
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you very much for having me today. I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank Colleen Gutwine and Neil for allowing me to speak with you today. I want to speak a little bit about my experiences here in Newark and hopefully share some of the insights that I've experienced and a personal journey that I had and the evolution of my work. I've been a Newark native for maybe about 30 years, and basically when I started in this area, it was a transplant. I lived in East Orange for most of my adult life, and I was the benefactor of $10,000 worth of art school. And my focus was very specific. I wanted to be a commercial and advertising and fashion photographer. And I wouldn't deviate from that. No one could tell me I couldn't do it, and I was steadfast and steadily focused on my career path. I ran into a few challenges because as a photographer starting out, it's difficult to go from a fully stocked kitchen in school to really building a business of your own, finding clients and representation, and really just, you know, getting about the business of really building a career for yourself. So for me, the theme Going Deep speaks to something that's very personal in my life. I had to make some difficult choices. You know, one of them being, you know, could I afford to do this full time? Could I earn a living and do something I had aspired to do ever since I was in high school? I had a few clients, and I was doing what I was doing, and I was steadily working on a portfolio. And I had good friends who believed in me. One of my friends was a designer. Her name was Crystal Warner Glass. And she started business at the same time I started shooting. And we opened a studio in the late 80s called Images Through Glass. It was a combination of disciplines. I started to walk around with my book and try to get as much, you know, feedback on what was strong and what wasn't, and I went back to my studio space and did whatever I could. What was funny for me at the time, a newsstand became something of an altar for me. I would stand there and I would stare and look at all of the magazines and all of the pictures, And I said to myself, ooh, I could do that, I can do that. I could study the lighting and the composition, and I had a firm idea of what I wanted to do when I would go back to my little space and apply it. But as time went on, reality kicked in, and even though I had both oars in the water, money was running low. So I made a very difficult decision to shoot part-time. So I took odd jobs, but photography had always been uppermost in my mind. That was the most important thing, and I wouldn't focus on anything else. So going deep was about finding something that was creative and something that was a niche, something that I could do with limited resources, because keeping a space was very expensive, and it wasn't something I was able to do. Me and my business partner, we did what we could do as long as we could keep the space open, but in time we needed to close, and that was the reality of it. So I was on foot doing whatever commercial gigs I could get and doing a lot of stuff. I stumbled across some literature in 2000. The Newark Arts Council was having forums on live and work art spaces in Newark. And that was music to my ears. I said, oh yeah, this is going to be a great opportunity. We'll get another space. This is going to work for us. The funny thing about Newark has kind of a phobia attached to it. People kind of act like there's barren wasteland between their house and Newark Penn Station. And I kind of felt the same way. You can't really determine, what your neighborhood's going to be like or the type of clients. I had people who were, comfortable going back and forth to Brooklyn, but they might not necessarily come to Newark and work with me. So that was a bit of a challenge. So the project that I fell upon was with the Newark Arts Council, and that was who spearheaded the conversations about the Live Work Artist Forums in Newark. And the gentleman at the helm at the time was Linwood Oglesby. And he was a champion of the arts community in Newark. And I met a whole bunch of people I had never met before. Even though I traveled back and forth from Newark for many years, I never met any of these people before. But we all had the same goal and the same vision. We wanted to create artwork close to home. It was a transformative experience for me because I had never really considered fine art. I knew that my clients wanted something that was clean and crisp and polished, and that was my focus. Shooting art and dance and sculpture and painters and poets. That was different. It was engaging and it was unique, and I was really thrilled. And it was as creative as the other medium that I was most interested in. It wasn't a departure, it felt comfortable, being around dancers and being around people who paint and sculpt. And we're hustlers. We were trying to work with whatever was available. We'd occupy a space similar to this one. We would go in with imagination and sweat equity, and we would come out with a beautiful, thriving thing. And I was so fortunate to be able to document that hard work and that struggle. And because of that, it's something that I stuck with. I love working with dancers now. I love working with artists. I love watching a painted stroke. I love being behind the scenes when I have the luxury of watching an artist, do what they do, something that's very intimate sometimes. I had the opportunity to look over their shoulder and watch them create artwork. Through that transition and the growth that it came from, I've been able to document nearly 20 galleries here in Newark. The established ones, the Newark Museum, as well as smaller venues such as Red Saw, City Without Walls, Algira, a Center for Contemporary Art, and Gallery 21, an indoor gallery, and Sume Multidisciplinary Center. And we all had the same thing. We wanted to create beautiful art here in Newark. And it was a great gig. It was a great gig for me to just walk around and go from place to place and even follow the same artist for more than 1 year, and just to see all the imaginative things that they would come up with. I was a big fan, and I've become a tremendous advocate of all the things that we're doing. So in doing that, I expanded very much in a different direction than I expected. You know, not only was I shooting the commercial stuff, you know, doing, you know, print work and advertising work, but now I had a cause, and I could work with people who didn't necessarily have a lot of money, but they had sweat equity. They had something they can contribute, and something that enriched what I was doing. And I'm just grateful. I'm just grateful that perhaps when one door closed, another one opened even better. And I'm really, really fortunate about all the people that I've met. Some of the artists that I've had the opportunity to work with, I can give you a little bit of a story of some of the people. I worked with this one artist. Her name is Nicole Lorraine Williams. And she was a bit of a character when I first met her because she was a visionary. And she always had these unique concepts, and she needed somebody to follow a blueprint that she came up with in her mind. And one of the projects that we did was, we did a parody of The Twilight Zone. She was lost in a barren world where all of the artists had come and gone, and it was just her left by herself. She called it Isolation Refreshed. And the montages that we created were a woman streaming through an abandoned city, very much like Newark, surprisingly, where she would just look at the remains of a rich history and life and people and what used to be there. And we did it all in black and white, and I think it would have made Ron Sterling very proud at how successful we did. And we had a lot of collaborations like that. One of the other projects we did is she fashioned herself as a feminist superhero, and she called herself Mala. And she adorned this bright yellow costume, and she became a superhero and a champion for feminist causes. So we had a lot of fun. We were able to shoot on location, and it's funny how some of the work played out. She was sort of absorbed by another entity, and it was a struggle between the two minds. And what looks like a struggle in one shot almost looked like a hug and embrace in another. And I just thought it was really funny how some of the imagery turned out. And it just speaks to how creative we are and how many different things that we're doing, you know, here in Newark. Another artist that I had the opportunity to work with is a person who I believe was very prolific. He had a lot of different disciplines, and he could go from one medium to the other. He was an artist named Jerry Gant. And Jerry Gant was, he was a sculptor, he was a painter, he was a poet, he was a philosopher, and he drew a crowd of people wherever he was. And he was somebody to be admired, somebody that you could learn a lot from. And I noticed slowly but surely I started to see less and less of him. I'm like, Jerry, what's going on, man? Are you working on anything? Are you getting prepared for the show? Or you got some new work you're working on? You know, and we always had the same conversation. We always, you know, frustrated about money, frustrated about how, you know, how things would pan out in terms of the investment versus, you know, what we were actually earning as artists. But I still started to see less and less of him. And I remember I was in New York at an expo for artists, and I ran into him. And I said, hey, Jerry, where you been? I haven't seen you in a long. What's going on? What are you up to these days? He said, oh, I'm doing what I'm doing. He said, Stafford, I really want to see some of the images you shot from the last event. And I have funny relationships with artists. You know, sometimes they're very, very, very generous, and other times they kind of want you to give them stuff for free, you know? And as funny as that sounds, it's still a way to earn a living, you know? Every picture is something that I'm going to use to make money. That's how I learned. That's how I was bred as a photographer. Everything is a source of income. And he said something to me that resonates now, and I wish I had paid more attention to it. He said, Stafford, I really would like to see your work before I die. And I said, Jerry, stop being so melodramatic, man. Just give me a hard drive and I'll put as many images on it as possible. Just buy the hard drive and I'll put the images on it for you. Well, we never got a chance to put that hard drive together before he passed away. And I learned from him specifically that all the art that you create is something to be shared regardless of the dollar value attached to it. We're all here to make money, we're all here to earn a living for ourselves, but art is a gift, and it has to be shared with as many people as are willing to look at it. So that's something I'm doing more of. I'm going to share what I'm doing. You know, it's not always about profits, it's not always about, but it's about passion. You know, I can make people happy with my work. And that's something I'm really looking forward to doing as much as possible, you know. So just being a documentarian of the things that are going on here in Newark, being on the scene when people do the amazing things that they're doing, and being an advocate, and realizing that some of the things I photographed aren't here anymore. Some of the people that I met have moved on. You know, artists are very resourceful. We'll just pick up and move. We'll just pick up and leave, you know, despite the time and sweat equity and the labors that we put into a space. We'll just pick up and go. We'll go to Brooklyn. We'll go to Montclair. We'll go someplace else. But they left an indelible image and an indelible mark on this community and these people. And I've been so grateful to be able to document that from the very first broke stroke to today. And that's, you know, one of the advantages of being open-minded to change and finding a niche and finding a purpose in it, and not wrestling so much with what they taught you in school, but really using life as a platform to learn in and being an artist. I can't paint, I can't sculpt, I can't draw. I don't even think I'm that good a poet, but I think that being a person who can record that and present it later, and I've served a valuable purpose that way. And that means a lot to me. And I'm just grateful that I've been in a position to do it. And who knows, maybe I wasn't destined for the other commercial stuff that I was so anxious to do before. Thank you.
Stafford. Do you want me to go through the slides that you presented and you can talk a little bit about them? All right. I think we start with this. Do we have sound here?
Sound.
This is a brief montage of
Do you need sound?
a few of the images that I've compiled just for this event. And it's funny because I've had the luxury of following artists for decades. And I've seen the infancy of their gifts and their talents. And I've been able to really, really, really enjoy their growth. And I can speak to 100 people. You know, people like Armisi Smith and Jerry Gant and Kevin Darmody and Colleen Gatwin O'Neill. And I've been amazed about the things that they've been able to do. Noel Lorraine Williams. And it's just been really, really a beautiful experience being able to do this every year. You know, the Newark Open Doors, Newark Artist Studio Tour Arts Festival. And this is where we shine, what we do, and we grow. We're always coming up with new things and always very inventive. This particular piece is of a musician And I shot him locally here at PSC&G, right there by the waterfall when it was a waterfall there. You have a combination of cascading water and jazz playing in the nighttime sky. And that was my concert just for me. And I had fun shooting it and I had fun doing it. I love to work with kids. The Barrett Foundation with Chandra and Gary Barrett was a strong and unique organization where they worked with the community and they worked with a lot of kids. And I love photographing young people having a good time and expressing themselves. And then I've met artists like Lacroix, Anwar, forgive me if I'm pronouncing it incorrectly, who's an excellent muralist, who has changed the face of all of these old buildings here in Newark. And every brushstroke and every fixture becomes alive, and it's different and it's changed, and it's given us a new neighborhood to look at. And this is another painting that has been commissioned in Newark. The artist is Kelly Privé. She did a mural called The Womb of Violet, and that was a beautiful piece. She was one of the artists that contributed to that. And there's an artist who has done some work on bricks. His name is Malik Whitaker, and he's a very talented artist, watercolor artist in Newark. And as I said, I've seen lots of spaces come and go. At one time, another artist was here in Newark. He had a gallery called the Russell Murray Gallery, and his family did some amazing things while he was open. And this is the neighborhood of another artist that I know named Anchor West, who does sculpture as well as architecture. This is an old Jerry Gant piece. This is a painted, I guess you could call it a water container. And this is a local poet. Her name is Jasmine Mann. And this is that piece that I spoke of, the feministic superhero named Mala. This is an artist named Lynn Presley. This is a work of Kevin Merkel. And this is just a tidbit, a taste of some of the things that I've been able to do while I'm here. The goal now is for us to really be intentional about space, intentional about our involvement in real estate. There's always a place to build and create and, create a piece of artwork, but it has to be a place that we're going to be able to keep and hold on to and own title to, and really, shift the focus so much from not just creating artwork, but, making it sustainable and something that's not going to be, not be taken away, just because a property could yield more profit another way. This is another artist who was in the area. His name is Andrew Maishman. He could paint with his elbows. And this was a dancer named Maurice Chestnut. And this is an artist named Suleiman, and another poet named Frequency, and another artist named Mansa Musa. And these are just a few of the people that I've had the opportunity to work with. There's lots of people doing what we do, and we're talented, and we're viable, and it's something that people should invest in and take note of. Instead of just going over to New York, we have a lot of art right here in the community that you can take advantage of and buy. And on the ground floor of a thriving career, if it's something that you want to invest your time in. In my work, I've had the luxury of meeting a lot of my heroes. I had an opportunity to do a gig for a young lady who was a writer for Rido magazine. She freelanced with a lot of publications. And she called me up one day and she said, "Stafford, hey, there's a Gordon Parks Film Foundation Awards banquet. And I said, oh, I'm in. Anything involving, Gordon Parks. I went in, and for the first time I got to meet somebody who I was truly, truly, truly a fan of. And I admired his work. When I reached out to shake his hand, I almost tore his arm off. I was so happy to be in the same airspace with such an icon. And he was very polite and very friendly and very, very nice to me. And he also appeared once at the Newark Museum for a book signing that he had. And I also was able to take the opportunity to take my camera out. I took the day off from work, and I said, I gotta be there. And I'm grateful that I went because it was the last time I was at the opportunity to photograph him. And I'm just grateful that fine art is, is possible with self-publishing and the internet. Oh my goodness, the internet. When I started, we did everything through mentorship. We didn't have YouTube to teach us anything. We learned from hard knocks. If somebody didn't teach us the wrong way and the right way to do things, we wouldn't have known. Now you can just turn it on YouTube and Instagram and you learn how to be an artist that way. We did it the old-fashioned way when I started. And, I admire what young people have access to now. This was a test shooting I did with a local artist. Her name is Dior. She's a model as well as a poet. And this was a beautiful shooting. We've known each other for many years, and it's funny because it was a very, very, very laid back and casual day. We just did a few pictures, at home in her house. And I had some good advice from an artist that I worked with who was very good at special effects and diffusing, and he said, just soften it, make it dreamlike. And I said, okay, we can do that. And now she looks like a goddess. And I was real pleased that everything, through manipulation was as strong and as beautiful as it is. That's one of the powers of Photoshop. If you didn't shoot it, you could certainly create it afterwards. Like I said before, I like to watch kids play. I think artists are like grown-up kids. Let's just say for the sake of conversation, you have a favorite playground. And, you take your kids to play every day. And one day you meet a big truck and a bunch of construction people, and they say, we're going to take this park over and we're going to build a condominium in this space. And I'm thinking, that's what's happening. We're not really allowed to play as much as we used to. Everybody's building this and building that, and we don't have people who are intentional about art spaces in Newark, at least not enough of them. I'm not saying they're not there. There's certainly fine work being done by the museum and organizations like that. I will not take work away from them. But we need more artist spaces here in Newark. That's something that needs to be a focal point of people who invest in our community. Art for art's sake. We need to do more of it. Like I said, I love to watch kids paint. It is a beautiful thing. I'm always amazed by the things that they come up with. And it's all innocent. We're all the same way. We just do what we do, and we're allowed to play. And sometimes we can make a little money doing it too. This is some of the artwork that Jerry Gant used to create. Like I said, he was a multidisciplinary artist. He did sculpture, he did fashion, he did poetry, he did spoken word. I said that twice. He really, really was prolific. And if anybody in this area has ever had the chance to see his work or watch him on YouTube, he was a fine artist. And, although he is no longer with us, I still think his work was phenomenal, and it's something that we should continue to enjoy and look at. This is his work, and this is him doing poetry. He was equally good at both. And he was a fine person to me. It's a little intimate moment when he's reading from some of his work, but I was there, right there, to capture every word. I'm so grateful for that. These are some other pieces of sculpture of his. He worked with leather and clothing and metalwork, and You never knew what Jerry would come up with, but you knew it was going to be a signature piece. He liked our people, and he enjoyed carving us in the most positive likeness. Now this was an interesting experience for me. I had a challenge one day, and I said to myself, how do you photograph a poet? They're not singers, they're not like clergy. When they speak, you have to be in the moment and really appreciate what they're saying, and that's not something that you can render in a still photograph. But the funny thing about this artist was, his name is Juba Dow. He hadn't written down, I should say he hadn't memorized all that he wrote down. So he brought his pad with him. And as he was reciting, he kept ruffling the papers and moving them around. And I said, does he have to do that? I mean, you know, why he didn't memorize more of what he was doing? So his focal point was on the paper. He didn't read into the crowd. He focused on his material. And the room lighting, I remember, was really dark, and it was real moody, and they didn't have much lighting in the room. So I was forced to slow my camera down really slow, which made shooting handheld real difficult. I didn't have a tripod, so I was doing everything handheld. And I had a moment when he turned towards me and he ruffled the papers in such a way as if they were almost in motion themselves. And I took the picture, and when I look at it now, it still amazes me because it's almost like the words began to move on their own. And I said, that's how you photograph a poet. And I'm very pleased with this particular picture because I finally figured out how to photograph a poet. You have to get them in motion, even though you might not hear what they say. There's other ways of doing it. I was very pleased with that. And this is some other outtakes from the same work. Like I said, it was real dark, and it was hard for me to, you know, get a focus on him because, you know, the lighting was bad and my hands were shaking, but I got what I wanted, and I was very pleased about that. This is another project I did with Noelle Lorraine Williams. This is our scene of a dilapidated building and the growth of it being abandoned for a really long time. You have your poppies growing out of the window. That's how long this building has been vacant. The poppies have grown completely out of the window. This is one of the elements of her isolation refreshed piece. And I think it's a good signature piece because surprisingly, this is in the same area that we're in now, Treat Street, long before they renovated the building that we're in. But this is what we looked at on a daily basis, traveling to and from Newark. A dilapidated space with weeds growing out of it, you know. This is some more images from that shooting. She is phenomenal. She found the entranceway to an old theater that was here in Newark that had been abandoned probably since the 30s. And she found an archway, and it still had the markings artist entrance on it. And we did a lot of photography in front of it, and